all of a sudden, things have turned very, very sour. But maybe not all of a sudden. I'm going to use a comparison that will rile many of you up. I think Jesus is a bit like Trump. You either love him or you hate him. And for those who love him, he can't do anything wrong. And for those who hate him, he can't do anything right. We'll let the comparison stop there and put that aside. That was just to wake you up in case you'd fallen asleep during the beginning of Mass. So how come the Pharisees have become so bitter? This is the third chapter of Mark's Gospel, and already they're out to kill him. What's gone on that they are so vicious in their hatred for him all of a sudden? It's not all of a sudden. It's not all of a sudden. This has been actually ramping up slowly in the last, from the beginning of the Gospel, actually, because it starts off with Jesus preaching. Now, the teachers at the time Jesus was around were the scribes and the Pharisees. They were the teachers of the law of Moses. And here comes Jesus, and when he preaches, the people say, wow, this is different. He preaches and with authority. It's kind of a bit of an insult to the scribes and Pharisees who've been teaching all the time, and basically the people are saying, you don't really teach with authority. This guy is much better than you. So maybe their noses have been pushed out of joint slightly because of that. But they're around when Jesus is preaching. They're around when he's doing his miracles. And they're there, if you remember, when the paralytic is healed. So noses have been put out of joint already by this guy who's upstart but better than them and more authoritative than them. And then he heals the paralytic, but if you remember, before he heals the paralytic, he forgives his sins. And actually, perhaps their worst nightmare, this guy is a blasphemer. He's not kosher. He's not orthodox. There is something wrong with this guy. And he claims to be God because he claims to forgive sins. He reads our hearts. This is the stuff that God does. And we dislike that. This cannot be so. And so they're starting to turn against him. We see more of that when they challenge him about fasting. And you don't fast. You claim to be God and your disciples don't fast. What else is going on? And again, during that little engagement, Jesus basically calls them old cloth, old wineskins. And he's the new wine that needs new wineskin. Again, maybe their nose is getting put a little bit more out of joint there. It goes on when he speaks about being Lord of the Sabbath, when the disciples, they challenge him again because his disciples, and they're actually being really, the disciples are eating ears of corn on the Sabbath day. And that was yesterday's reading and following. So the Sabbath is becoming a big thing. And they're being really pedantic and actually looking for fault. And what Jesus was doing yesterday actually wasn't against the Sabbath, but they were trying to make it into that when it wasn't. So they're starting to trump up charges against him. They're starting to ramp it up that you're actually a false preacher, if you like. And here now they are starting to look for ways, because Jesus has each time he's trumped them. Now they're looking for ways to do away with him. And so they now have the ammunition they need. He does good on the Sabbath. He works does a work, a good work, a healing work on the Sabbath. And it's a work. It doesn't matter if it's good or evil as far as they're concerned. He does something physical on a Sabbath. And so they have the ammunition now to go out and try to kill him. And who do they go out to look for, to work against with? They go to the Herodians, their natural enemies, those people who are kind of the secularists, whereas the Pharisees are the religious type, and they are so opposite. And yet, in order to get rid of Jesus, they will side with anyone. The enemy, the friend, so the enemy of my enemy is my friend, and so they make friends. This is the obstinacy, the hardness of heart that is building up in them. They cannot see the truth. They have judged Jesus and condemned him. They don't actually see what's going on. We do, because we're reading the scripture and we now see with the eyes of faith. They don't. And isn't that the same, really, with other people in general, with us? That we do exactly the same with others? You know, somebody perhaps acts in a way that, you know, I don't particularly, maybe they say something that I don't particularly like, or maybe they wear the wrong clothes that I don't particularly like, or they just their behavior, no, I don't particularly like that. And so we cease to be for them, and we are now against them. There's no really a neutral ground. And so anything they do, yeah, there we go. We've judged. And that judgment just gets worse and worse and worse. And eventually we condemn. We don't want to have anything to do with that person. They can never do anything good. We start to speak about them. We start to criticize them in front of other people. And we start to look for their death. You know, this is the criticism. This is the gossip. This is the handing on of lies about them. And so we can fall into the trap of the Herodians and the Pharisees. We don't know what's going on in the heart of another person. We don't know where they've come from. The Pharisees certainly were blinded to who Jesus really was, and we're often blinded to our neighbor. Time to forgive. Time to accept our neighbor as they are. Time to love our enemies.